I'm back here for day 24 of BookMas. So I'm gonna do my reading stats. I like doing stats, are fun. I mean, I'm terrible at math, but I like seeing how my reading year shaped out, like what I read more of, what I was more intrigued by, and what are some takeaways that I'm going to work on in 2022 and in future years. So let's get into it. I my goal always is to read 100 books. My secret goal is to read 200 books, and this year I surpassed both substantially, which is awesome. I'm really happy with that. But for this year, I was able to complete 242 books. I think I probably would have read like at least 6 more if I hadn't gone to Disney, but I am still really happy with that number and I'm very, very pleased by it. Um, so yeah, very, very impressive. Last year I read 209. So that's a pretty big increase. And a lot of it is audiobooks because I listened to a lot more audiobooks this year, but still really impressive. The next stat that I kept track of was I read 121 books that came out in 2021. I normally split my reading year. I read half backlist, half current, like books that came out in this year, and half books that came out in previous years. So that's pretty much on track for me. And then I read 114 books that came out in 100 before 2021. And I probably read like one or two, maybe 3 books that were going to come out in 2022, but it wasn't enough of a stat to keep track of. But I think it was at least like 3 of them. Again, some of these I might have made mistakes, and I'm sure my math's a little bit wrong, but that's a general statement, and that's sort of how my reading year breaks up. I tend to read half current books and half backlist. So, first stat that I kept track of was I was able to donate 92 books of the books that I read this year. Again, I did have a massive flood this year, so I did wind up doing a pretty big unhaul and getting rid of between 300 and 400 books. But those were not books that I had previously read, so according to my careful calculations, I was able to donate or find new homes for 92 of the books that I read. Probably quite a few more, to be very, very honest, but that's the books that I kept track of. So very excited about keeping track of that stat, and I got rid of a lot more, but I do like giving books back and giving books to other people once I read them because I only have so much room for books in my house, and as you can see, I only keep my absolute favorite ones. That I kept track of was I read 42 YA fantasy reads for the most part. I might have coupled in a couple other books, but I normally don't include middle grade. So I read about 47 pure fantasy reads, and that tends to be my highest number overall, just because I tend to read a lot of fantasy books. Fell off a little bit at the end of the year, but that's a pretty impressive number, and that's always my largest because I really do like fantasy reads. And then I read 31 contemporary books. That's actually a little bit less than I was expecting, and I definitely want to try to have a little bit more balance and read a bit more because I realized I read not as much this year, and I think I read quite a few Regency romances, but I do want to read more contemporary this year, and I'm going to make it a goal. Or just like a focus point because I've read a lot less last year, and I want to fix that in 2022. I also read 25 mystery books, like YA mystery books, which I'm very, very pleased with that number because I think last number I didn't read nearly as much. So that's definitely an increase for me. And again, may have been a balance between reading more mystery and less contemporary, but I want to have an equal balance between both. I also listened to 68 audiobooks, which is very impressive. A couple of those were rereads, a lot of those were nonfiction, but I had a really, really fun time. And I hope to do more of that in 2022 and not as be distracted by like other things, which tends to be my downfall. But yeah, so that was a pretty exciting number to see. I also read 16 Regency romance books. Towards the end of the year, I definitely got more on the train of listening to Regency romances, and I'm really liking that. It's going to probably be the focus of this year as well, but it's just nice to see that I'm diversifying my reading habits a little bit. And then another stat is I read 41 middle grade reads, which again is a pretty nice stat. Again, I right up there with my fantasy reads, which is really, really good. And I do really like middle grade, so I'm happy that that number has stayed pretty high. I read 21 nonfiction reads, which is a mix of like, you know, educational stuff, like informational, political, and also just like general self-help. So that's really, really exciting number. I definitely read more than last year. And I read 22 graphic novels, which is really exciting. Again, something that I really struggle with, so I'm happy that that number has increased as well. I read 4 adult fantasy books, my lowest number by far, but it is the goal this year to have at least 12. We'll see how successful I am. And then I read 5 science fiction reads. Again, tends to be my lowest category, but I did make a bit more progress on my Star Wars reread. I only read like 1 or 2, but hey, progress was made. Can't complain. And then I read 10 YA or middle grade historical fiction, which was a nice addition to my list. I'm reading another historical fiction book right now, and I'm really, really liking it. So hopefully I will just keep doing that and read more historical fiction books because I do like them, and I think that they're very informative, but also very, very gut-wrenching. I also read 34 sequels or books a part of a series, which is definitely a good stat for me because I have struggled with that so much. And this is also companion books as well, but I really struggle with that stat. So happy that it's high and not like it was the previous year. And I also read 11 Kindle reads, which is definitely my lowest stat. I never read pure books on my Kindle. I just forget about them. I'll be very, very honest. I read 16 former physical con reads. I still have quite a few con reads, obviously, but because of the pandemic, we haven't been going to in-person cons. So I still have quite a few on my list, and this is just a stat that I like to keep track of because eventually when cons come back, I would like to keep track of the books that I actually read, but it's hard right now because a lot of them are e-arcs. And then the next stat is I read 30 e-arcs, which again is not as impressive as it should be, but I do want to make more of a focus reading more physical, like e-arcs on my monthly, and that is a new goal that I have instituted, and I actually have to read one more this month for sure, so I will definitely add that to my list in the next couple of weeks. But again, a much better number than my previous year, which I can't argue with. So that's actually really, really good, and I'm happy of the progress that I made. Stat is I picked a couple of authors and I only read one of their books. That's gonna do better this year, I promise. So hopefully I read more than one. I have a couple of different authors that I'm gonna focus on, but again, was not as successful with this one. There's always one goal that I'm not successful in, so this one was just the one that I was not as successful in 2021. I hope 2022 is better. And then I completed 13 series, which is really good. Again, I struggle with that a lot. My next video you're going to see is me talking about the series that I completed and my overall thoughts. And the last stat that I keep track of is I caught up on 14 series. So I'm up to date on 14 series. So again, those are my stats. If you have any stats you're really proud of, comment them below and I'll talk to you for my next BookMas video. Bye, friends.